Imagine waking up in a hotel room that looks completely different from the one you went to sleep in. Or two strangers having dreams about each other before they even met. The world is full of strange and unexplainable things, and that is exactly what we will be talking about as we cover the top 10 parallel universe stories that will make you question reality. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Tea Time. This story comes from someone who has a very strange memory from when they were around 9 years old. They were eating dinner in their room for some reason that they can't quite remember. What they do remember, however, is being sat at their dresser, which had a big mirror. While sitting there, the storyteller's dad came in to check on them and asked if they wanted more tea, to which they replied yes. They picked up their empty teacup and handed it to him and watched as he walked out the door. In the next instant, they looked back over and saw their same teacup, completely full of tea, right where they had just picked up the one that was empty. They of course asked their dad about this after, because what in the world is going on, and their dad said that he never came into their room at all. This story is bizarre for sure, but there's also something really eerie about it as well. I can totally see why this was one that really stuck with them. In our number 9 spot today, we have the hotel room. This story starts out with the storyteller explaining that this strange story happened when they were on a family road trip. They write, quote, "We stayed at a hotel for a night. Our room was nothing more than 2 beds and a restroom with a big mirror across from the beds. Everyone went to sleep but me. I stayed up playing a mobile game I was addicted to at the time. At about 2 AM, I went to sleep. When I woke up, I noticed something was just ever so slightly off. The mirror was gone, the room had 2 separate bedrooms, and there were 3 beds. Apparently I was the only one who noticed it because my family called me crazy. Still confused to this day as to what happened." It's the small changes like this that would have me absolutely freaking out, because it seems small but you know something is off and different. I don't blame them for still remembering this day and questioning what exactly happened here. In our number 8 spot today, we have a new phone. Okay. This one wouldn't be the weirdest one in the world, but it has to do with the lost phone, and I just can't get over how strange the place they found it was. So they write, quote, "My friend and I were talking to our roommate and her girlfriend one night. Roommate had just received her new phone and was sitting in bed using it while the 4 of us chatted. So roommate sat her phone down while we were all still chatting. She goes to pick it back up and it's gone. Like, she had just put it down for a few minutes tops before she noticed that the thing had poofed. I call it for her and we can't hear it. We take the comforter and the sheets off the bed, shake them all out, we look under the bed, behind it, everywhere we can. That phone is gone. Even though we hadn't left her room at all during our conversation when the phone disappeared. We tore apart the whole apartment trying to find it. Finally, we decided to try her car. It was locked in the trunk. We live on the 3rd floor and we were all in the same room watching her use it before it somehow teleported." There's something about finding anything in a locked trunk that seems kind of eerie and creepy, and couple this with how the whole thing is seemingly impossible, and you've got a lot of unanswered questions here. In our number 7 spot today, we have a server's nightmare. This story starts out with someone explaining that it comes from a time many years ago when they worked as a server at a restaurant. The memory begins with the quintessential server panic experience, where their coworker forgot to punch in the food order for a 3-top. If you work in the service industry, you know the absolute panic that sets in, especially if you're like me and never write things down. You can't go back and ask these people what they had when their food should already be out and on the table. It's a panic like none other. Anyway, so this coworker not only forgot to punch in the food, but also of course forgot what the order was. This storyteller was laughing at their stressed coworker who was obviously trying to figure out what to do, and while laughing at him, the storyteller threw out a random order at them. They said, quote, "It was probably fried mozzarella, a cheeseburger with no onions, and chicken fingers." While the storyteller was joking and just having fun, it turns out that somehow this was the exact order that the table had ordered and the person needed. It totally freaked the storyteller out, and they even made their coworker let them run the food to the table to make sure that he wasn't making it up. Turns out the storyteller was right and probably saved their coworker a lot of stress and hassle. In our number 6 spot today, we have the camp photo. This story comes from someone who has always remembered this strange thing that happened years ago when they were 12 years old and at camp. They explained that they were taking a photo on a disposable camera because because cell phones were still in the flip phone phase, and considering the fact that they were 12, even if they weren't, it's not like they had a cell phone anyway. So with this disposable camera, they were taking a picture of two of their friends that they had made while at camp. This is all fine and well, of course, and honestly very cute, but it's what's seen in the photo that really has stuck with this person. They explained that in the photo, one of the friends appears twice in two entirely different poses. They explain that it still weirds them out every time they come across it. In our number 5 spot today, we have Employee of the Month. This story comes from someone who almost had a premonition of sorts. They explain, quote, "I was sitting in my office one day when my desk phone rang, and it is my undersheriff asking me to bring him all of the reports, dispatch logs, any documentation reference to a specific case, so I get it all together and start towards his office. I meet him in the hallway and hand him the paperwork. He asked me what it was. I told him it's the blank documentation you asked for. He then swears he never asked me for it, that he had just arrived and had not called my office. He was on his way down the hall to ask me to get it together." I mean, at the very least, I hope he gave this person a raise, because while this certainly was a weird experience, that's also the most efficient employee I've ever heard of. I hope that's not the new work standard though. Like, what do you mean you didn't anticipate my needs? In our number 4 spot today, we have The Repeater. This story is one that only lasted for about an hour, but it definitely was a strange and confusing hour for the person who experienced it. Basically, it started when they were watching TV with friends, and they ended up landing on some sort of old 80s movie that they used to watch many years prior, but hadn't seen in quite some time. All of the dialogue from the movie came flooding back to them, and they remembered what each character was going to say next. Not so weird, our brains work in mysterious ways. This, however, seemed to open some sort of gate, because when they changed channels and were trying to find something new to watch, this person was now able to recite every line of dialogue prior to it being said, as if they had memorized it all, but this time it was with shows they had never seen before in their life. This then translated into them being able to predict what their friends were about to say right before them saying it. Again, this strange effect only lasted for about an hour before things returned to normal, but what a strange hour that would have been. In our number 3 spot today, we have The Inside Scoop. Maybe this is a parallel universe story, or maybe this person is just a bit of a clairvoyant or something of that nature, but whatever you want to call it, this story is definitely a weird one. They write, quote, "Sometimes I'll be talking to someone I've never met, and very specific facts about them will pop into my consciousness out of nowhere, like this person had a golden retriever that died in 2009. Then they'll inevitably bring up the fact that I mentioned without me saying anything first, sometimes seconds later, sometimes years. This would be so strange and also so hard to navigate. You'd have all these things you seemingly happen to know about this person, and now you have to avoid bringing them up until they do. It's like knowing someone's secret. That would be really weird. If you had this sort of ability, would you tell people or would you keep it to yourself?" In our number 2 spot today, we have The Wake Up Call. This story comes from someone who is explaining a very scary moment that their brother experienced that is kind of unexplainable. They start off by saying that it doesn't seem as though their mom believes this story, but they definitely do. Most of that is because they saw their brother after this incident and could definitely tell that something had seriously spooked him. They write, quote, "He was sitting in the passenger seat driving home alongside my mom. A bright green car swerved and hit them, knocking bits and pieces of glass into his arm. He jolted awake afterwards, just in time to see the green car pass them. He claimed he felt the marks the glass left afterwards too." So basically, this guy might have somehow been in a reality where this accident really did happen, and then was able to jump realities to one with a better outcome. Or perhaps he was just temporarily transported to the other one before jumping back into this one. The possibilities really are endless when it comes to the multiverse, and I can totally understand how an experience like this would have somebody pretty shaken up. Whatever really happened here, I'm just glad that this person somehow ended up in the timeline where everything is a-okay. In our number 1 spot today, we have The Boiler Repairs. This story is a bit of a longer one, but it's so strange and truly like nothing I've ever heard before. It absolutely shocked me. This person wrote, quote, "This didn't happen to me, but to my dad. He works for a heating and air conditioning company, so he often has to go out to people's houses to fix things. About 5 years ago, he told me he had a bizarre dream where he went on a call to an elderly woman's house. He'd never seen the house or this woman before, but he said it was bizarre because of how realistic the whole thing felt. He fixed her boiler in the dream, chatted for a bit, and then left. About a week later, his company gets a call from an elderly woman needing her boiler fixed. They sent my dad on the job. When he arrived, he said it was the exact same house from his dream and the same old lady. He knew her name before he even had to ask and knew his way around the house without having gone inside yet. When she opened the door, she said, "Hi Gary," and when he asked how she already knew his name, she said she had a dream last week that her boiler broke and that my dad is the one who came to fix it, so she just knew that would be his name. Two complete strangers never having met each other had the exact same dream that they would meet each other, and they did. The whole thing is so crazy. That would be so strange, but also so cool. It's almost like they were destined to meet each other in some way. Honestly, the unexplainable can be terrifying, but it can also be kind of nice and cool and truly mystifying. All I want to know now is if Gary and the elderly woman kept in touch. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye!